So we should be on the bottom of page 4 of your notes. This is part 2, 2.5. We'll see where it goes. But the reason that we take a break shorter than normal notes is that you have some coloring to do on your notes. So if you turn to actually page 6 and 7, you've got some coloring and labeling to do for the plant and animal cell. Okay, so that's going to take you a little bit of a while to do well and to do correctly, because the more that we practice labeling and looking at these diagrams and the names of these organelles, the better we will learn them. Okay, so and we, again, as a reminder, our test on this material is not until after the quarter ends, next quarter, okay, quarter 2. All right, so we're on, again, bottom of page 4, slide 18, and we've got cilia, which I mentioned last time. These are these little hairs, tiny hairs that beat like little oars in a boat, and they move the organism, single-celled organism, around in its environment, in water, right? Okay, movement. They're also present in the cells of your lining your bronchial tract, your lungs. They beat like this, and they move mucus that captures things you breathe in, particles that you breathe in. That's how your lungs get that out. So every once in a while, you'll go. Or you'll cough up, some mucus or whatever. It's usually swallow it, but that's your lungs kicking out using the cilia and the respiratory system, kicking out the material that you breathed in, dust and other, filtering out. All right. So some animal cells have that. So you wrote that down in your chart there. Flagella are the long whip-like tail. Sperm, for example, has a flagella to propel it through the vaginal canal, where it needs to go up into the fallopian tubes, which we'll learn about that stuff next semester, to fertilize the egg, okay? And other cells like euglena have flagella, whip-like tails also. For movement. All right, so those were animal specific. Here are some plant specific. So top of page 5. Oh, there's a picture of euglena on your slide there. So label that euglena, spelled like this. Euglena, it's right there in your notes. So just label that a euglena so you know what a euglena looks like. All right, so plant specifics. Organelles specific to plants. So the cell wall, we don't have any cell walls in our body. That's why we can do this and not crack like a branch or a leaf. It's non-living, so it's just made out of cellulose, a glucose polymer. Remember that. Remember when the one glucose comes in and flips? Okay, that's for making cellulose. That's why we can't digest it. But cows can, and goats, because they have bacteria in their gut that can break that down, and termites as well. Cows don't have termites in their gut. Termites have bacteria in their gut. Okay, cows, that'd be weird. So it supports and protects the cell. That's why plants stand up straight. Found outside of the cell membrane. So it's the cell wall, and then the cell membrane. So this whole thing is the cell wall, and then the cell membrane on the inside, and then all the organelles inside that floating around. Plants also have a large central vacuole, where animal cells do not. So if you had an animal cell right next to a plant cell, you would see that typically plant cells have this giant swimming pool in the middle, and that's where they store starch. They use it obviously for water storage, and it's either absent totally or just very small inside animal cells. Plastids are in plant cells, and they come in different forms for different purposes. Synthesis and storage of food is pretty much the main idea. So I think you've all heard of a chloroplast. Plastids, all right? Chloroplast is the one that has the chlorophyll in it which is a green pigment, to absorb certain wavelengths of sunlight to stimulate photosynthesis, to make glucose, right? Produce and store glucose. Chromoplasts contain different pigments to absorb different wavelengths of sunlight, which increases the efficiency of the photosynthetic process. So red, orange, and yellow pigments would be in the chromoplasts. And those are found in flowers and fruit, a carrot, which is a root, but peppers, tomatoes, all kinds of flowers that are those colors, okay? And leucoplasts. Leuco essentially means white, and so there's no pigment in these at all, and they're for storing starch, storing the glucose in chains for future use by the plant. Food. Plant makes its own food, right? All right, chromoplasts specifically. So the chromoplasts we're on page 5 now, right in the slide 22. Carrot root cell, for example, like I said before, filled with orange pigment called carotene. Now chromoplasts synthesize, that means make, and store pigments. And here are some parts, but I don't think you have to know those. Just know that it is very similar to a chloroplast. Okay. Synthesize and store pigments. So the chloroplast is the main one we're going to talk about. These are the ones that we're most interested in because these are the ones that contain chlorophyll, which absorb most of the sun's energy. So, again, these are found only in photosynthesizers, producers, also called autotrophs. Autotrophs mean make their own food, So heterotrophs are the opposite of an autotroph. That's like us. We can't make our own food. We can't stand out in the sun and make our food. That would be pretty amazing. You know, if you forgot your lunch money one day, you just stand out in the sun and you're fine. Organelles containing the pigment chlorophyll. So that, again, pigment is specific for capturing certain wavelengths of light that are coming in. You know, the rainbow of light, when you take sunlight and you hit a prism and it turns into a rainbow, all the different colors, Roy G. Biv, it reflects green. So your first instinct is that it absorbs green light. No, green light bounces off of it. That's why it's green. It actually absorbs mainly blue colors, blue light, blue wavelength. Never in animal cells, like I said. Use light, we know this. Why? To make glucose, we know this, from carbon dioxide and water. So remember the photosynthesis equation. Water and carbon dioxide yields glucose and oxygen. Okay. And the energy, this is a key point here. The energy from the sun gets stored, just like kind of like a battery, in the bonds that hold the glucose together. And when we eat glucose, when we eat plants, we break those bonds, which releases the energy for us to do things like this. It's rather simple. Now, if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, there are complex steps in between all that, the biochemistry of it all, but we don't have, if you take if you take AP Bio, you would get into more of those steps. So now we're on the next page, page 6. So there's a double membrane, an outer and an inner membrane of a chloroplast. What's amazing is that chloroplasts have their own DNA. The outer membrane is smooth and the inner membrane is modified into these pancake-looking stacks called thylakoids. So these are stacks of thylakoids, okay? And the stacks are called grana, granum singular, okay? And then the stuff that's inside, the cytoplasm that's inside of this organelle is called stroma. And that surrounds the thylakoids. And that's what this is, remember, this is an organelle that's inside of a plant cell. Not all the plant cells, like an oak tree's stem, trunk, is not going to be photosynthetic, but the leaves will be, right? The roots are not going to have chloroplasts in them, just the photosynthetic parts of the plant. Now, some plants do have stems that are photosynthetic, but trees don't typically. All right, so now that we've covered those plant-specific parts, you are going to make your drawings look like this. Now, all the directions are here. So again, you see this is nice and neat. The coloring, within the lines, so to speak. It's scientific. It's not necessarily a piece of artwork. So yes, you are going to stay between the lines. So you're going to essentially make that, look like that. Okay, and then same with the plant cell on the next page. You're going to make that look like that. Okay, so you have the remainder of the period to do that, and then you're also going to do the test yourself on the bottom of page 7, which extends to the top of page 8, and then that will pick us up on part 3 for next time. Okay, so we're coloring and labeling now.